You're listening to 50% Facts,
the show where we try to answer specific questions on an individual topic, and then at the end we bring in an expert to give you the real answers.
I'm Jim McDonald.
And I'm Mike Farr.
Welcome to our show.
Vertical fucking jump.
Yeah. I actually was just watching a video of, I'm going to fuck his name up, Tom Matafis.
No clue.
He's a strongman competitor.
All right.
Somewhere here in the United States. He's built like a lightweight bodybuilder. He's like thick, really thick dude.
Yeah.
And I have an Instagram video of him doing like a huge box jump. And I always wonder how guys do that.
Yeah. What's his name was built like a tank, and Eddie Hall's built like a tank now. Have you seen him?
Yeah,
abs running around. I bet you. And he was supposed to be a really good swimmer.
Yeah,
Thor can jump. I think there's videos of him dunking.
Yeah,
he's 6'9", and he used to play basketball, so he should still hopefully be able to dunk. And then Puchinowski is obviously a little more jacked.
Yeah,
but then that balance of athleticism and strongman of what you can jump or not, like the guy you're talking about, probably can't compete with Brian and Thor in the big dog world.
No, he's not. He's not a big enough guy, I don't think. Yeah. But he's still like he looks like a bodybuilder.
Yeah, yeah.
Who else? Oh, Dave Hoff has a huge
big
vertical jump. He can jump up onto a reverse hyper without any problem at all, even now. And I've always been told that had something to do with all of the squatting, especially all the dynamic squatting and all that stuff. But I don't know.
Our boy T-Bear, Tristan Scholl, had some hops in him.
Yeah, he did.
I don't think so, and that's just my personal experience from training and stuff. Some of these things, it's we're going to start to find different layers in this podcast, right? So we're laying down a question, folks.
Yeah.
We're going to try to answer it to the best of our ability, which some topics might be 90 to 100%.
Yeah.
And other topics might be 20.
We might be way off.
So we found the average of 50% facts that we have. And then we're going to have an expert in the category come tell you what the fuck's really going on. And so these categories today, I feel are a little bit more in my wheelhouse.
Yeah.
Because we're going to go venture down some places and I'm going to be totally lost, and hopefully you guys will be able to tell that I'm totally bullshitting. But on this topic, I have firsthand experience as a coach, firsthand experience as an athlete, and a little bit of, not clinical knowledge, but some education on the topics. So I played basketball my whole life. I was a pretty good jumper. I hung on the rim. I'm 5'8", 5'9". I was probably 5'8" in 7th grade. I hung on the rim for the first time. Stubby arms, so whatever that vertical is. Never actually tested my vertical officially until a couple years ago at the CrossFit Games. There was just a booth testing it, and I was totally out of shape, not jumping anything, and I think I wrecked in about 34 inches, which is pretty decent. I think the average NBA vertical is like 36 or 38. And 34, that's me totally untrained, not jumping at all.
Right.
So I got a strength and conditioning coach in 8th grade. My dad got him for me, and we did a bunch of stuff, and he definitely helped me not get injured, I think. That was probably the biggest thing he did. And we did some stuff to try to improve my vertical and my speed and all that. But I just think that genetics is going to rule all, and then the conditioning you're in to perform blah, blah, blah task, right, will whether it's GPP or specific to jumping, will determine how much you can jump. So say my baseline is 34, I'm totally unconditioned. I think getting in shape, I could probably get to 36, 40 if I was a little bit younger, or maybe right now. But I don't think you can just improve somebody that can't jump a lick and get them to a 40-inch vertical.
I can't jump a lick. I'm that guy who can't jump. But actually that brings up a point. Like, is it always there?
Right.
Like, because I wouldn't have any confidence that I could. Most of the things that I can do, I don't have any great confidence that I can do them every single time.
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
Yeah.
There's always a very drastic fall off from moment to moment, and anything can happen. And I not being an athletic person at all, really, like powerlifting is the only thing I had any feeling that I could do consistently.
Yeah. You found a groove.
Yeah,
and I
knew what it was supposed to feel like.
That's a whole other topic too. Whether is athleticism kind of a just a base thing? Because I kind of think it is. Like, I only played basketball my whole life competitively, but In high school, I think you could have thrown me in a competitive football game. I could have kept up. I think you could have thrown me in a decent soccer game. I could have kept up. I've never played baseball in my life, but like I bet you I could hit a fucking ball coming at me. You know, just like I think there is some base that I just had from dicking around my whole life, or genetics, or whatever it might be.
Right.
And some people may not, and it may be practiced. And everyone has something. Same with music. We can get into that, right? There are obviously savants in all of these, but is there like a degree of genetics, or is it a degree of just like, maybe when you were younger, you were doing more art, or you were younger, you were doing more analytical things, and I was outside fucking kicking a ball by myself against a wall. You know, who knows?
Yeah, for me, I think it's just been coordination. I don't have the eye-hand coordination to, I love baseball, but I was terrible.
Yeah.
I was really bad at it because I can't hit a ball because I can see it coming at me, but I think I might be able to see it in a little bit too much detail, or at least I could at the time. I had, outstanding vision as a kid, not so much now.
Yeah.
But I had like 20/10 vision, so I could see it, but I couldn't time my reactions to the speed of it.
Right.
In the same way that it's difficult for me to, like if I was like filling this room with stuff, like I couldn't tell you where things needed to go until I physically put them there because I don't have that sense of space.
Sure. Or the vision, like it's not imagination, but like everyone's brain works differently how you envision things.
Right.
And some people literally have to do to envision. That's kind of like what my weird school is all about to begin with, right? Like some people have to do to learn, some people can like see to learn, and some people can like read to learn or hear to learn. Another thing with the vertical, I think, is another thing that I've experienced as a coach and trainer over the last 10 years is flexibility. I've never had somebody that, and there's literally a kid in my class, really good athlete. I think he ended up getting a full ride for men's volleyball. But so he would basically bend over and, like touch your toe drill or stretch, and he would like touch it like the bottom of his knee. Like he's so inflexible. He had a really long torso and short arms. And we're stretching every single day in PE class or basketball practice or whatever, and that kid never touched his toes. You know what I mean? So like all these mobility people and all these yogis and all that, like you're a really good yogi. One, yes, you practice and it's hard work, but you're just flexible, and that's why you found yoga, and that's why you're dope at it. You're not going to make me, do like this backhand bridge and fucking break my back. Like there's certain things that I'm just pretty stiff. I tried to do a little Olympic weightlifting, and like I was stiff before I bench press. Like I have stubby arms, and they just don't want to go behind my head. My dad was kind of short and stubby. That's just how it goes. You can't really turn me into the world's contortionist yogi. You know what I mean? Same thing, I think, if, for you, we'll use you example. Like, say you have a 20-inch vertical. I don't think we're getting you to 36.
No.
Could we get you with some practice to 22, 24? Sure, maybe. And then it's the same as lifting and everything else. The better, I think, your base is often, the higher your potential is to grow, right? Like, if you're Ed Cohn, like, first time he deadlifts, pulls 405, like, all right, with some training, he's probably going to smash. Rather than the first time I pulled, it was probably like 135 or 225. All right, I have some potential, right? What your body can already adapt to, you probably have a higher base to begin with.
I wonder if Ed Cohn could ever dunk, because God bless that man. He's
long.
a hobbit.
He's long.
He's long but short.
Yeah, long arms.
Long arms. Super long arms.
Yeah, I don't think, say him example, because you're talking about Dave Hoff,
Yeah.
Having springs in him. Our boy Tristan Scholl squatted 1,000 pounds a couple times, having crazy good flexibility and vertical jump. See, I think squatting obviously helps. If you can increase your triple extension, what it's called, folks, is your ankles, your knees, and your hips all extending at the same time. That's the strength, for running and sprinting. And it's very, very rare, if not impossible, to have someone with a very big vertical jump that is slow. And there's very rare that someone that's very, very fast has a shit vertical jump. They often go hand in hand because it's the same musculature involved. And you guys probably heard the term posterior chain, right? Where we're talking about like our traps all the way down to our erectors, even our lats a little bit if you want, glutes, hamstrings, and even our calves. Those are the things kind of propelling us forward,
right?
As well as your quads are involved because your knee has some forward movement, some extension going on for the vertical jump. So getting those stronger while practicing the task of jumping, those are kind of opposite hands, right? A 1-rep max is slow, but you're using the same muscles. A jump is very unloaded, but you're using the same muscles. So you practice the whole spectrum of, we can get nerdy, and strength, speed, and sprint, whatever, right? Max load, working your hams, knee extension, hip extension, or clean. That's the only exercise, or clean and snatch. You're actually doing triple extension because you're using your calves. You don't really use your calves in a squat. Or you practice the unloaded version, right? Maybe a box jump, maybe just jumping. different skip drills, running drills, and you work the whole spectrum there, you can improve for sure. But I just don't. I just don't. And even me, I grabbed the rim in 8th grade, trained my face off for 10 years, and it's not like I was throwing 360 dunks. At the end of it, I would get a little baby dunk, that wouldn't even be considered a dunk by many legit people. It was like 1 in a million.
Yeah, no, not everybody can hang off the rim. And not everybody in the NBA can hang off the rim, right?
Yeah. I mean, I'd say everybody probably can when they're all alone dunk in the NBA.
But in a game.
Yeah, in a game, probably not.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that was kind of my situation.
Yeah, went to the opening game of the Stockton Kings, the G League, the other night, and that's the most hanging off the rim I've ever seen in a basketball game that looked professional, supposed to be professional or whatever.
Yeah.
I've never seen an NBA game that had that many guys proving that they could hang from the rim.
Yeah, I wonder why. I just, I guess they're just out to prove themselves, or maybe they're younger too. And
it was both teams. It was Stockton, Sacramento's G League team, and the G League team from OKC.
Oh, okay.
And everybody was taking shots like that, and really hanging off the rim, and everybody was showboating big time.
Yeah, I wonder another thing too, maybe, and I don't watch much G League. I just learned that the G League is a Gatorade thing.
Yeah,
I didn't know that.
Yeah,
how commercial?
It's on the court.
Yeah, how commercial are we? I didn't know that, which I found so funny because I still call it the D League in my head. Another thing I think is those players prior tend to be less skilled, so they're just as athletic as some of these cats in the NBA, but they don't have the shooting skill or the dribbling skill. So then they're out here trying to show off, dunk on somebody.
Right. I think that's probably the case.
Yeah, which is kind of like the junior college I went to. Even though we had some pretty skilled guys, we just had athletic freaks that probably didn't have the best grades, so they couldn't get into a big D1 school with their grades. Yeah. So they're just monsters out there, but not necessarily the
best.
The book smarts or the most skilled necessarily.
Yeah. Anyway, fun game though. It was fun to watch.
Yeah, but it was just like a really good college game, like just a little bit wilder.
Exactly it. Yeah. That, and there's more money behind it. Ultimately, I think than your average JUCO game would
for
be,
sure.
I guess.
Yeah, I wonder what they make. I bet you the best guys maybe 6 figures. Actually, some of the guys are on an NBA contract.
Yeah,
and they're just coming down there for rehab. So there is money for sure.
Which is why that team got moved to Stockton, which is 45 minutes away.
Yeah, it was in Reno.
It was Reno, and Reno. The weather over the winter makes it difficult to move people back and forth very quickly. Here, it's very quick.
Yeah.
You could move somebody on game day very easily without any problem at all.
Yeah, not affect this gameplay. Yeah, I'm going to the Kings game Friday, hopefully, with our guest, our expert today.
Yes.
So that should be exciting. I haven't been to. I don't know if I've actually been to. Oh, I've been to one Kings game there at the new arena.
Yeah,
I've been to a couple of events, but not Kings games.
I went to a bunch the first year. I went to a few last year. The only one that I've been to this year was a preseason game.
Yeah.
Was the Israeli national team.
Oh yeah, that's cool.
Yeah.
My buddy plays pro. Shout out to Clint. He plays. He played at St. Mary's here, college here. Made a run into the Sweet 16, all that, and then he plays professionally over in Australia in their NBGL or whatever their league is. And they did a big tour over here, so I think they grabbed some of the best Aussie guys, not necessarily the national team, but some of their teams, and flew them into Dallas, I think, and they played like the Dallas Spurs and did like the Texas tour there, which is it's pretty cool. They do that. They do that in soccer all the time. Barcelona or Manchester will come over here and smash on some American teams. So it's cool to see the NBA do that a little bit more often.
Why do you think that? Because vertical jump is such a evaluation tool. It's very much like the bench 225 bench press for reps in football.
Yeah,
in college, like it's such a it's like the SATs.
Yeah, it really is.
How did it get to be that way? Do we have any idea?
I don't know. I think in my head, so I don't think it was well thought out.
Yeah.
Yeah, our guest should probably know. He knows a bunch of weird strength history. I think in my head it probably wasn't well thought out, but I think it actually is a way better indicator of athleticism or who will do good in basketball or football in this case, actually, than the 225 bench.
Yeah.
Where having some upper body strength is great, but how to apply that strength is a lot more important, and that's what the vertical jump is. Right, it's not. They're not doing a 225 squat for reps. They're applying it in a vertical jump, which is literally what you're doing for every shot, every rebound, every defense, and then depending on your position in football, you're doing it a lot as well. If you're a DB or wide receiver or linebacker or something like that, and then the correlation, like I said, that if you have a big vertical jump, you are going to be fast. There's just no. I've literally never met anybody that's jumping through the roof and isn't fast as shit.
You know, it's funny. It reminds me of Kelly Starrett bit that he does in probably every single seminar that he ever does, and it does anywhere, about speed and about how he basically asked the group to jump slowly, which of course you can't do.
Yeah.
You know, jumping is a fast activity.
Right. Yeah. It's, fast twitch muscle fibers. Your type 2s are firing out. They're the bigger muscles. They're, again, your quads, hams, glutes. Yeah, type 2, all that nerd stuff. I used to know it. There's 2 type 2s, too. There's type 2A, type 2B, and all these things I used to know that I half forgot, but I got the gist. I guess we'll get the real answers.
What else can we think about that we know about a vertical jump?
I don't know. Another thing that it does obviously correlate to the squat, and this might just be a tangent, but everyone talks about like how to squat and pushing through your heels, and I was working with a lot of, obviously you jump and sprint off your toes, the balls of your feet, and so dealing with a bunch of high school and collegiate basketball players mostly is where I started my career in strength and conditioning. Teaching them how to squat was very difficult, because not that the squat's unnatural, because you see all these babies doing it and they have perfect planted feet and heels on the ground, but in basketball, like I had pretty big calves because you literally don't put your heels down. Defense, you're on your toes because you're trying to be quick. You're sprinting on your toes. You're jumping on your toes. Everything's kind of on the balls of your feet. And that's just a random thought that popped in my head that has no correlation to anything we're talking about. But squatting, obviously, yeah, you're on your heels and you're more on your hips. You're more on your hips, and you do use your hips when you jump and sprint. Obviously, you're activating your glutes and hams, kind of pulling with your toes, which are different sprint drills. But you don't think about it. And when you're a kid and you don't squat, you're not a power lifter. You're not in the gym. You're just fucking walking around on your toes. I think I used to walk. I think my dad. You learn how to walk from your parents, and that's a whole nother question. This is the best part we can learn questions from here is flat feet. Oh, yeah. Because flat feet aren't genetic, I don't think, right? I think people think that it's a learned thing. We'll get some expert. But I think my dad had flat feet, and I think he walked on his toes. So I walked on my toes for a while, and I remember thinking about it. I was like, dude, I kind of prance when I walk. Like I kind of do like a model walk on my toes.
Yeah, I feel you on that. Yeah. Well, I mean, I have these genetically enormous calves, and of course, I've always more walked on my toe than my heel.
Yeah, I think I do too.
But I think I don't know. I think that like walking or the limited amount of running that I do, if there's food involved, I think that I strike the way you're supposed to when I run, but just the walking, I'm always up a little bit.
Yeah, speaking of Kelly, I know you did a whole book on that in the book Born to Run, and there's a lot of conversations going around about heel striking or running on your toes, and I'm no expert in what's the latest right now people are talking about, because and the other thing with these conversations is people start talking about what's optimal for like a human, and like what historically and through fucking evolution we're made to do, and then that's a different conversation of like what's optimal, because like same with squatting and walking and all that, right? We want our knees to track over our midfoot, but if you see every dunk Jordan's ever done from the free throw line, from anywhere else, he takes off on one foot, and that foot he takes off on, that knee's kind of like shifting in kind of hard, and so like but he never really had knee problems. Like I'm sure his knees hurt. Every basketball player knee hurts,
but he just did a big valgus as he was trying to
but it's not like he ripped he didn't rip his ACL every time he jumped, and he had a 42-inch vertical, so he's probably doing just fine. What are you going to tell Jordan, like, kick that knee out, pal? Like, nah, I think he's doing okay.
So when they test vertical, are they doing, is it a 1-step? Is it a 3-step?
I think it's drop step is what we call in basketball. I don't know what they call it in the test, but you have one foot planted and you can bring the other foot in. So it's not a full step. One foot has to be planted and you step the other foot into it.
Okay.
But I think other places too, maybe the NBA, they might do that, like a drop step or a planted foot or a pivot foot, and then they might also do a running start, just for shits and gigs. Okay. But all the numbers you hear officially, I know the numbers you hear officially, like if so-and-so says they have a 42-inch vertical, or when I said I had a 34-inch when I was out of shape, that's my foot planted, and you just get one step to jump into it.
Okay.
Which I know it isn't the highest number, because some people are jumping through the roof, because people running jump, obviously, and not everybody jumps off 2 feet. That's a big conversation in basketball. Like when guys are talking to dunk, do you jump off 2 feet or you jump off 1 foot? What's more comfortable? I was way more comfortable off 2 feet, but I had buddies that would launch off of 1. The highest vertical I heard of was some French cat. He's a pro dunker. I think it was like 55 or something. Kind of skinny little white French dude, and just mega bounce.
That's crazy.
Yeah. But I think he was like, whatever at basketball. but he could just jump through the roof.
So that was his specialty. He just
I think he would just do dunk expos.
Yeah, which is entertaining.
Oh, tons. And in the early 2000s, like that was a huge thing. I don't know if there's like a big market for it right now, but like there's And One, which is a shoe company. They did the And One tour and basically did street ball. It was basically like trick basketball and dunkers. And even now, I'm sure there's halftime shows and different things where you probably get paid a little bit at least to go around and dunk and do a trick. I don't know.
Yeah, there's still a dunk competition, right?
Yeah. There's a dunk competition in the NBA. I'm a huge NBA fan and huge basketball fan. It's just like the big stars, I think, because they play so many games and they're playing so hard, they're saying no to that. So they can just have at least one more day break there. You know, like back in the day, the Jordans, the Julius Ervings, all these guys would hop in these competitions. Even the Larry Bird would hop in 3-point competition. But now it's kind of like the second tier or third tier guys that are really athletic, but not the big brand names of the NBA are hopping in them, and they're still good, but not the same vibe.
So what sports other than basketball would find a good vertical beneficial when they're looking for athletes?
I think the joke is that men's volleyball, at least men's volleyball, ladies volleyball is different. I think a lot of ladies like to play volleyball, and so like they have really elite athletes. But men's volleyball is like the athletic guys that couldn't catch kind of deal. You know, so they're like the NBA basketball rejects in high school. Yeah, those guys have a big vertical. Football, I think, just because they're absolute stud athletically. Like again, not every position jumps, but like a running back's not jumping all the time. But again, that guy's just a little tank and he's fast, so they probably have a big old vertical.
Have you seen the pictures of the catch, the statue that they built at the catch? At Levi Stadium.
Yeah. And some of those guys are just Randy Moss, I think, had a 46-inch vertical. Yeah. I mean, there's some freaks running through the NFL.
And then athletics too, like long jump.
Yeah. If you can jump long, you can probably jump high.
You would think. Yeah.
And high jump is kind of weird to me. I saw a video, and don't quote me because it's going to be jacked up, but it was like somewhere in Africa, you know, like tribal Africa, and these guys are doing a high jump, except they don't have a pad to land on, and so they're landing it on their feet, but they're still like jumping kind of a similar way. They're going over it and kind of like tummy barrel rolling over the bar, and then kind of fully rotating and landing on their feet, where if you guys have seen track and field at a high level, they just land on their back on this big squishy pad. I have mixed feelings about that. I like the long jump. I like sprinting, but like in the high jump's cool, but it seems like to turn into kind of even like you said, a box jump. I think a box jump is cool, but it's not your full vertical either. Like if you're super flexible or you wiggle your legs around the box and then you're just showing your hip flexibility, sure, you have to jump fairly high to get a big box. But same with like what Olympics turned into the high jump now. Those guys probably have insane verticals for sure, and they're great athletes. Don't get me wrong; they jump way higher than me. But then it turns into like a high jump / contortionist. How you cannot touch the thing, you know?
Right.
And it's just not visually as appealing to me.
Yeah. What's the name of the flop that they use for pole vaulting?
Oh, I don't know, like the pad thing.
No, the going over with your back first.
Yeah. I don't know.
Because they didn't start breaking records until this one guy whose name I can't remember went over backwards.
Yeah, I heard that story. In 80s, maybe 70s?
I think 70s, 60s, 50s. I don't know.
Yeah.
50s, 60s, 70s, I think. I don't know. Somewhere in there.
Yeah. And guys might have been straight landing. They might have been doing it normal.
Right.
And then they added the pad in, and now guys are doing crazy numbers. I don't even know what those numbers are like.
They're pretty impressive.
Yeah. But yeah, the box jump, you know, you can move your legs. So if you do a 46-inch box jump, and I don't know if this is like a dumb, but some people might not know. If someone says they can do a 46-inch box jump or a 36-inch box jump, does not mean they have a 36-inch vertical or a 46-inch vertical. That means that who knows what their vertical is, but then they can lift their feet high enough to get onto that box.
Right.
Where a vertical test, they have basically these spindles on a tall pole, and they'll measure what your hands are straight above your head, whatever that is. Mine's tiny, 6 something, and then they'll measure the difference between what the top of your reach is and the top thing that you touch on the spindle. You spin it and it'll disrupt them. They're like in a row.
Right.
It'll disrupt them, and you'll see where you touched. Or an old school way, they'll have like chalk or some soot or something on your hand, and you'll touch a wall, and then they'll measure the difference. Where box jumps is.
And a thing that's distinctly different about a box jump is that a box jump doesn't care where your arms are.
Yeah.
I mean, it doesn't care that they're over your head.
It has nothing to do with reach.
Whereas a vertical they might measure where your feet are, but they don't have to land any particular place. Your feet don't have to be anywhere in particular.
Yeah.
And I guess sort of a side question that I'd like to ask him is, like, do box jumps matter?
Yeah.
For strength athletes or any athlete?
Yeah,
do box jumps matter if you're not playing? If you're not playing a sport that requires you to jump?
Yeah, because box jumps are, again, not a total definition of your vertical, but they do take coordination and they take different things that just a vertical test don't do. But they're not necessarily means that you have mega jumps if you could do that. And then, we got another question for we're having Jacob on for a couple episodes here, so we have a couple things that all these kind of overlap. Jacob Ross, those that don't know, he's one of the best strength and conditioning coaches in the world, has worked with tons and tons of professional athletes, from NFL running back Matt Forte to more recently he travels around and works solely with Luol Deng, who is an NBA All-Star. He was part of the Chicago Bulls during the big run. He had a little Luol's my guy, by the way. Love Luol. Loved him since Duke. But he's had a little trouble in Los Angeles, some drama, whatever. Now he's back on the floor, so he's in Minnesota Timberwolves, as well as Jacob's out in Minnesota. Trains him every day, travels with him 365, and basically works his tail off to work with elite athletes. He's worked with Olympians, sprinters, tons of team sport athletes. So our questions for Jacob are very much so related to athleticism, strength and conditioning within that realm.
All right. Well, you think that we plumbed the well on what we know about this, and we're ready to talk to Jacob?
That's it. Get us, Jacob.
All righty.
Ladies and gentlemen, Jacob Ross. Is it Jacob W?
Jacob W. Ross is on my, Jacob.w.ross, my Instagram.
Is that a middle name?
It is.
It sounds very...
Do you want to guess what it is?
No, but Winston.
Nope.
It sounds very Civil War presidential.
It does.
I'm from Texas.
Yeah, Jacob W. Ross. Oh, I don't know.
I want to say Walter, but that was my grandfather's name. So, William.
Nope.
No.
I'll give you one more guess. Very popular in Westworld name. Very popular Westworld name.
I watched it like 3 years ago. Walter
Wyatt.
Wyatt.
Like Wyatt Earp.
Yeah, Wyatt. That's good. Tell us about yourself. Who are you? What the hell do you do?
My name is Jacob Ross. I am an elite sports performance coach. I've trained 10 All-Stars, so whether that's Pro Bowl or Olympic medalists. And I've trained probably over 100 professional athletes, a few hundred collegiate, high level, lots of adults, high school kids as well. And currently I work for myself, and I do a little consulting, a little training, kind of a little bit of everything.
Current main gig, Luol Deng.
Yeah.
NBA All-Star.
Yep, been with Luol. This is our 9th season together, 2-time NBA All-Star. Some of my other, favorite kind of top clients, Matt Forte, Chicago Bears, one of the best running backs to play there after Walter Payton, of course. Used to train Devin Hester, best return man of all time. Asia Evans, most athletic person I've ever trained. She was an Olympic medalist in bobsled. Lots of fun, lots of cool people.
How do I jump higher? I'm 5'8", I'm Caucasian. I want to dunk. That's what everybody listening is, 5'8", male Caucasian that wants to dunk.
This is correct.
It's a very interesting question, and I would say it's a very common question. The vertical jump has been made to be a gold standard in sports performance testing. Anytime you're talking about an athlete in almost any sport, vertical jump is one of the main factors that people like to consider. They like to brag about if they have it. So I was consulted to do an article in the Washington Post a few years ago about this, as March Madness was coming about. Mm-hmm. And I don't think a lot's changed since then. It's pretty simple. You have to have enough strength, but then you have to also be able to apply that strength in the range of motion that you're trying to go. So it's the two things together. You have some people who are really strong, but they don't apply that strength optimally to that range of motion. And then you have some people who are very athletically gifted. They naturally apply that strength well, and by gaining strength, they could, in theory, enhance their vertical jump. So you always see, maybe a 16 or 17-year-old phenom who really hasn't strength trained, and they have a 36, 38-inch vertical. Zion, in Duke right now. Yeah. What did he jump, a 44, 42?
Yeah, and he's, 17.
Yeah, there's no way he has enough training years under him, especially with like a top-level coach, to really say his training did that.
Right.
And then you will see people who work really hard, get really strong, and then they figure out kind of a way to get there. So, I think it's become such a thing because originally in academia, it was a great way to test power. It's a fairly simple test of power. How can this person athletically apply some strength? But in terms of practical value, there's not a lot of sports outside of probably basketball that it has a true practical value. Like NFL, okay, you have a 40-inch vertical. Maybe a wide receiver or a corner, yes. But everything else, if you're a running back, you have a 40-inch vertical, practically speaking,
who cares?
Yeah, you're not jumping over the line very often. They actually try to discourage them from doing that. It doesn't go well when you get smacked in the air. But, or MLB, for instance, or even hockey. I did some testing with the Dallas Stars when I was in college, just, preseason testing. We did vertical. I'm like, these guys are on skates. They're not jumping on ice. It's crazy. Maybe hot, but they're not jumping, truly jumping. But, I do get it. It helps you get a better sense of the person. It helps you get a better sense of the athlete. It helps you get a better sense of kind of where they're at. But I have seen people, who have great verticals and they don't play well. And then you have it the other way around, people who aren't athletically gifted, but they play whatever their sport is very well.
What are maybe top 2, 3, 5, you probably have a bunch, exercises you'd say to maybe gain that strength before you learn to apply it?
Yeah, I think for me, one of my top things is anything that emphasizes posterior chain. I think it's really, really important. And box squatting is a great way to do that, especially if you actually box squat, not just squat and tap a box. There's a difference between the two. The adductors, the glutes, hamstrings, spinal erectors, calves, all that's worked really, really well if you do a box squat correctly. And the idea of this kind of the static dynamic where you have to stop on the box, relax the muscles, you store up that elastic tension, and then you have to explode. And I think the process of doing that really applies and turns over well to a real vertical jump. Outside of that, there's a lot of simple things. Glute ham raises are incredible, very safe, easy to do. Actually, I really enjoy walking lunges. I think that's another one, especially if you're talking about transitioning from like a run to a jump, like in basketball. I think that's a good one. You get outside of that, you want to make sure that you're doing some sort of motion or movement to apply that strength. So, whether it be med ball slams, kettlebell swings, there's tons of sled work you can do. You can do sled cleans, sled sprints, sled jumps, box jumps. Kind of building it on one end and then contrasting it and putting those two things together might be the most powerful method, to be honest. So you take somebody doing box squats and they superset it right into some sort of a box jump. It's called contrast method. Or you do an isometric kind of hold with like a squat bar into a rack and then you turn around and jump. I think that really is one of the best ways to help increase a vertical jump. And again, a fairly simple way.
Yeah, you're trying to take both ends of the spectrum from moving lightweight very fast and moving heavyweight, which is just going to be slow because it's heavy, right? So a heavy box squat into like you said, a med ball slam that weighs, 5-8 pounds, something like that?
Yeah, a lot of people sometimes work on technique, probably too much. And I think the easiest analogy is a car. You can take a car and you can maybe change the paint or put some rims on it. It doesn't make it any faster.
Yeah.
At some point, you have to change the engine. And that's where the real strength work comes into it. But our body also has to, like you say, be taught to apply it. So you want to use some sort of a load that isn't maximal so you can move quicker. But it's enough of a load that you do get some sort of a training response and an adaptation response to it. So really pairing those two things together is where you start to see the maximal gains.
So we talked about, looking at our last bullet point up here, we talked about what other than basketball does a big vertical apply to?
Track and field, for sure. There's a sprinting component in terms of speed and power to your vertical. Obviously, things like high jump, long jump has a really big carryover to it. Some NFL positions, baseball, not much. Maybe outfielders is interesting, but how many times you see it on TV a lot in top 10, like a guy jump up and snag a home run, right over the fence. But when you actually look at the number of times that happens, somebody jumps a 32 versus 36-inch vertical, you're not going to not sign them.
Yeah, your draft value isn't going as high as the NBA. If you have the same point guard and one can jump 20 inches and one can jump 36, you're probably going to take the guy with 36.
Absolutely.
But maybe not in baseball.
Yeah, correct. And same thing in hockey. really any of those major sports. NFL is interesting to me because they do put a big emphasis on it.
Mm-hmm.
If you're watching the NFL Combine and you see a defensive end, who's 280 and he has a 40-inch vert, people just go nuts.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, this is incredible. But even defensive ends who, they try to jump up sometimes and block, hit a pass.
Mm-hmm.
They don't really fully jump because they can't. They're engaged with a lineman. So I still question why some of these things put such an emphasis on it.
Mm-hmm.
But basketball, I think, is clearly the best connection. I think track and field's a very close second. NFL, depending on the position. Then after that, it's just a good indicator, but it's not, maybe a causation, correlation type thing. It's not going to cause you to be a better player in some of these.
Yeah, maybe volleyball was the last one I think I mentioned.
Oh, yeah.
Which is just less popular of a sport, but a lot vertical. Yeah.
That's a really good point. I mean, volleyball is one of those where it absolutely makes sense because for the most part, if you're playing up front, you get a chance to load up.
Yeah.
You kind of jump even if you don't block it, so you kind of know it's coming. You get a chance to load up. That's actually probably the best example because other than high jump, it's one of maybe the only major sports where you really do know it's coming. You're able to load up and do it.
Yeah, a little different than basketball.
That's a scholarship sport in a lot of places too. So
yeah,
that's a point.
All the basketball rejects out there that can't hoop, go play volleyball.
There you go.
It's true.
Bryce Lewis is a volleyball player.
Yeah. He was like a setter though. He wasn't the vertical guy.
Okay,
Yeah,
all right.
A little too short. Sorry, buddy.
So how is this legitimately tested?
It depends again on each league. So the NBA does a couple. They do a standing jump, and then we'd have to actually ask our friend Ramsey exactly. He goes to the NBA Combine every year, but sometimes they do like a two-step. Sometimes they just do a free running vert. I think it's changed over the years, and every few years they maybe tweak it a little bit. But basically they do a standing, and they do some sort of 2 or 3-step approach.
And can you jump higher with more steps, or does it depend on the person, or?
So there's two really interesting sides of that. So there's the side of, can you jump higher running into it? I would say for most people it would be yes. For me, that's not the case. In college, I measured a 36-inch vert on a biomechanics measurement. So not like a standing. They have a thing called a vertec. That's what you see in the NFL Combine. It's this tall thing with these little fan blades that you jump up and hit, and they swing around. In a biomechanics lab, you jump on a force plate, and you put these little, diodes on your hips, and they actually physically measure the difference. They film it and measure the difference between the ground and how far that diode moves.
Ooh.
So because, for instance, if my shoulder mobility isn't great, or maybe I'm just not good at timing my jump, you might lose 2, 3, 4 inches even on a vertical jump tested the traditional way. In a biomechanics lab, you can get the true vert. Exactly how far does your hip bone move? So for me, it was a 36-inch vert. And I used to be able to dunk a little bit. But running up and jumping, I couldn't dunk at all. Standing right underneath the rim, I could.
Just a timing deal for you?
I think for me, it's actually more of a training thing because I do power lift. I used to do strongman, so I do a lot of in-place squatting, a lot of in-place deadlifting, even jump. I do box jumps and all that, but it's always in place. I don't practice a lot of the running up and jumping, so I'm not skilled at transitioning that power from a horizontal kind of force to a straight-up vertical one. But most people are. Most people are much better at the running up.
Especially if you're playing basketball your
for
whole
sure,
life. Yeah.
For sure.
And you're taller than both of us.
Yeah, I'm 6'4" on a good day. 6'3" maybe sometimes. We'll see. But the other component, though, is 1 foot versus 2 foot jumping.
Yeah.
So, you have people like Charles Barkley, who's probably one of the more famous 2-footed jumpers. Even on a fast break, he would plan off 2 feet to jump up and dunk. And then most of what you see now is 1-footed jumpers.
Jordan.
Yeah,
Kobe.
LeBron, any of those guys. You don't see a lot of 2-footed jumpers anymore. I'm also a 2-footed jumper. So my theory, I don't really have any research data on this. I don't know that it's been done. But my theory is when you're a more power-based athlete, you jump off 2 feet because you're maximizing your strength. My strength is I have really strong posterior chain. So if I get both feet on the ground, I can use more of my hips. When you're a little more athletic and you're better at converting that, that power to a specific explosive movement like a vertical jump, the running up off of 1 foot is probably a better choice.
So we had a question about that we couldn't really resolve about the relationship between a box jump and a true vertical, because you're not in extension, you're not reaching up, and there's some power lifters and other people who are defy gravity by being able to jump way up on a high box, not precariously, like practically a flat-footed landing, and they're not, what's the story there?
Yeah, I mean, the problem with box jumping for measurement is a lot of hip mobility has to do with more of it than anything. I mean, yes, there is some carryover between a true vertical jump, like on a vertec where you jump up and tap, versus a box jump. But some people can jump 4, 6, even 8 inches higher on a box because their hip mobility is crazy. So their feet, get to a certain area, but if you don't have the hip mobility to drop your hips and land on the box, that's a separate skill.
Yeah.
So some people box jump really well and some people don't. Luol is a great example of that. Luol's been in the NBA for 15 years. He's, very explosive athlete, can dunk a variety of ways. But in box jumps, he's not a great box jumper. It's just the movement, the landing, it's just not natural to him.
He's got the longest legs on the planet.
Yeah, exactly. It's just not natural to him. Asia Evans, the Olympic bobsledder, I've seen her hit a 52-inch box jump, but she can't dunk. She's 5'8". It's not like she's short, but it's just a different skill between the two. So I don't think they have a ton of carryover in terms of comparison. I think box jumping has some benefits because you land kind of at the peak of your jump. You don't get as much like kind of sheer force on the knees. So there's a training value there. But in terms of practical value, comparison or measurement, it's not a great one.
So if you were programming it for somebody who was trying to increase their vertical, like what percentage of the time would they be doing box jumps?
I would...
Or would they do them at all?
Yeah, I usually rotate them weekly because, again, jumping for sport is such a varied thing, unless it's track and field where it's similar every time. The circumstances, you kind of have your rhythm. But for basketball or even volleyball, it's such a varied activity that I like to program a variety of jumps and in different ways. So one week we might box jump. The next week we might do a running 1-foot jump and try to tap maybe as high as you can. The next week we might do a seated box jump. Jumping off of foam, so you don't get as much feedback from the ground. So the force you're pushing, you kind of overextend your force that you push in, because all these components are important in producing the training effect when they're used logically. And the variance is important because sport is so varied. And unless you're working on a specific skill like high jump, the goal for an athlete is I need to be able to jump well. So whether that's 2 feet, 1 foot running, maybe I'm a little unstable, maybe my hips are to the right. So I try to every week switch up the stimulus to get that athlete prepared to fire in any situation.
Are you judging that based on just the amount of reps that you put in for them to do, or is there a specific goal in terms of like this high box or this high touch or?
Yeah, I mean, in any training, I like to measure records. So if we're doing box jump, we absolutely have a record for that person. If we're doing it single foot, seated, with a weight vest on, we kind of track the records for any of that stuff. And it's helpful for the athlete to see that progress. I think it makes them buy in so much more, even if we're just saying it, maybe not translate 1-for-1 over. So you might see somebody who's a great box jumper and they add 4 inches. You won't probably see 4 inches on their vertical because maybe the hip mobility got better. But they did feel more confident, and I think that puts back into their training. And there is some carryover. So I really do like tracking the different ways and making sure that we're progressing in those.
Yeah, even the squat, right? I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but you could take someone who can kind of dunk, and they could add 100 pounds on their squat. Doesn't mean they're throwing windmills.
Oh, 100%.
Yeah, but you want them to progress. You want the athlete to buy in. You want people to continue to train hard. So you have to have some kind of standard.
Right.
And that comes back around, I guess, to the genetics of it. Is somebody who is never going to dunk going to benefit from working toward that goal, even if they don't ever make it?
So that's the bell curve thing, right? You're going to have the people who genetically, from birth, they're going to be dunking when they're 14, when they're 20, maybe when they're 30, even 40. They just have that ability to apply that kind of power in that range of motion. And then you have people who might be a little bit on the downside of that bell curve, a little bit to the left. And with some strength training, with some adding to that's all they needed. And that kind of unlocks it for them. But then you have some people who, for whatever reason, and I don't even think it's a big fiber type issue thing, because fiber types, they've shown to kind of change depending on how you train. So I don't think it's a huge fiber type thing, but there are some people, it just seems like they don't respond well to power training in general.
Okay.
So they just don't see the 1 rep max gains that they would like to see. They just don't have a huge explosive capacity, and you can for sure modify it. You can for sure push their individual boundary, but it might not ever get to the point in which you're able to athletically dunk. I mean, if you think about it, dunking is it's a skill.
Yeah.
Because you're not just jumping up. I think that's probably one of my problems growing up is I was powerful enough and I could jump pretty high, but you have to palm a basketball or cup it, which is very difficult to do if you don't have big hands. And then you have to get it over the rim.
Timing.
In coordination. I mean, there's a lot going on for a dunk. It's not as easy as just jumping up and touching something. So there's always that component too. So let's say somebody works for a really long time and they get to be able to jump high enough. Well, then they also have to learn the skill of it, because chances are if they can't already dunk, they don't have humongous hands. So they have to learn how to hold the ball, how to cup it, how to time it, how to swing it, how to rack it, whatever it is that you got to do to get the ball over there. So that becomes pretty tough.
I will say that some of the enormous hand things is where your hands are enormous too, because I've got big ass palms and I can't palm a basketball very well at all.
Yeah, so NFL combine and I'm sure NBA combine, they measure from the end of your pinky to the end of your thumb, because that seems to be the most important indicator.
Like a wingspan.
Yeah, a wingspan of your hand.
Yeah.
You know, a wing hand.
Yeah, because my palm is tall, but it's not all that wide, and my fingers are not all that long.
Yeah.
Beautiful. Jacob, where can people find you?
Jacob.w.ross on Instagram, and that is it. That's the only thing I have.
Beautiful. Ladies and gentlemen, be sure to subscribe. Ratings and review. We'll catch you in the next one.
Thank you very much, Jacob.
You're welcome.
And thanks to all of you who've reached out on social media and told us that you're enjoying the show. If you have not already, please hit up your platform of choice and give us a review. We would really appreciate that as well. We're also starting to post the audio versions of the program on my YouTube channel, which is Jim McD 1234. You can tell it's an OG channel because it doesn't have a very interesting name. Anyway, you can also find it on there. You can leave us comments there. In general, though, if you have questions that you would like us to address on the show, you can hit us up on Twitter with the hashtag 50%facts. I'm at the Jim McD on all the social media. Mike is Silent Mike with 2 Ks on Instagram and Twitter, and we'll catch you next time.